There are maritime disasters that shock the world. And then there's the Costa Concordia, a tragedy so unbelievable that it redefined everything we thought we knew about modern ship safety. This isn't the story of an iceberg appearing out of nowhere or a storm that no one saw coming. This is the story of a captain who made a series of choices that killed 32 people and turned a luxury cruise into a nightmare that played out on live television. January 13, 2012. The Costa Concordia departs from Civitavecchia, Italy at exactly 7:18 p.m. She's a floating city, 17 decks high, longer than the Titanic, carrying 4,229 passengers and crew members. The ship cost $570 million to build and represents the pinnacle of cruise ship luxury. State-of-the-art navigation systems, GPS tracking, radar that can detect objects miles away. Captain Francesco Schettino is at the helm, 11 years of experience commanding cruise ships. He sailed this route to the Mediterranean dozens of times. Tonight should be routine, a 7-day cruise ending in Savona with stops in Barcelona, Marseille, and Rome. But Schettino has decided to deviate from the approved route. The tradition is called a salute. Cruise ship captains sometimes steer close to shore to blow their horns for locals and show off their magnificent vessels. The Costa Concordia has performed salutes near Giglio Island before. The ship's owner, Costa Crociere, has never officially approved these maneuvers, but they've turned a blind eye because passengers love them. Here's what makes Giglio Island dangerous. Beneath those crystal-clear Mediterranean waters lie massive granite rock formations, some the size of apartment buildings, lurking just below the surface. The underwater terrain around Giglio is so treacherous that local fishermen have known for generations to stay away from certain areas. Every maritime chart clearly marks these rocks. Schettino's navigation system shows them in bright red. His GPS displays their exact coordinates. So why does he sail closer to shore than any Costa Concordia captain has ever attempted? The investigation reveals several theories. Phone records show Schettino received calls from friends on Giglio Island earlier that day. Some witnesses claim he was trying to impress Domnica Chimortan, a Moldovan dancer who was on the bridge that night despite having no official duties there. Others believe he was showing off to Mario Palombo, the ship's head waiter, who was from Giglio and had family watching from shore. The truth is probably simpler and more damning. Francesco Schettino was a showboat who thought the rules didn't apply to him. At 9:45 p.m., everything changes in an instant. The ship's hull scrapes against a massive underwater rock formation called L'Escole. The sound is indescribable. 114,000 tons of steel grinding against granite creates a noise so horrific that passengers 3 decks up can feel it in their bones. The impact tears a 230-foot gash along the port side of the hull below the waterline. But here's the detail that makes this disaster so infuriating. Schettino saw it coming. Unlike the Titanic's collision with an iceberg that appeared out of darkness, the rocks around Giglio were clearly marked on every navigation chart. The ship's radar operator, Silvestro Coronica, actually warned Schettino that they were dangerously close to shore. His exact words, "Captain, we are too close to the rocks." Schettino's response, "I know what I'm doing." The helmsman, Jacob Rusley Ben, later testified that when the collision became inevitable, Schettino screamed, hard to port," but by then, basic physics took over. A 950-foot cruise ship traveling at 15 knots cannot turn on a dime. In the engine room, water begins pouring through the hull breach at a rate of thousands of gallons per second. Chief Engineer Gregorio Baresi immediately realizes the ship is doomed. The watertight compartments, designed to contain flooding, are overwhelmed within minutes. Emergency generators fail, backup power systems shut down. The Costa Concordia goes dark. And that's when Captain Francesco Schettino makes the first decision that will haunt him forever. When the Italian Coast Guard radios asking about the situation, Schettino tells them the ship is experiencing a blackout. Not a collision, not flooding, a blackout, as if they just need to reset some circuit breakers and everything will be fine. Coast Guard Commander Gregorio De Falco asks directly, "Do you have problems on board?" Schettino replies, "No, we have a blackout and we are checking the conditions." At this moment, the Costa Concordia is listing 15 degrees to starboard. Water is cascading through multiple decks. Passengers are sliding across floors that have become walls, and the captain is lying to the people trying to save them. 26 minutes after the collision, when the ship is listing so severely that dinner plates are smashing against walls and passengers can barely walk, Schettino finally admits to the Coast Guard that they're taking on some water. Some water! Like admitting a hurricane is a little windy. Meanwhile, passengers are experiencing something no modern cruise traveler ever expects: genuine terror. The ship's public address system crackles to life with announcements that everything is under control, that passengers should return to their cabins, that the crew is investigating a technical problem. Passenger Benji Smith later described the scene. "People were falling over each other. The elderly couldn't walk on the tilted decks. I saw a little girl separated from her parents, crying. The crew kept telling us it was nothing serious, while we could literally feel the ship sinking beneath our feet." By 10:30 p.m., 1 hour and 15 minutes after the collision, the Costa Concordia is listing at 25 degrees. The lower decks are completely flooded. The ship's emergency power fails completely, plunging sections into darkness. Passengers trapped in interior cabins have no way to open their electronic door locks. That's when the abandoned ship alarm finally sounds. 7 distinct blasts, followed by 1 long blast, the international maritime signal that means everyone needs to get to lifeboats immediately. But here's where this disaster transforms from a tragic accident into something far worse: a betrayal of the most fundamental rule of the sea. Captain Francesco Schettino abandons his ship. Not last, as maritime law and basic human decency require. Not after ensuring every passenger and crew member is safely evacuated. He leaves early, while hundreds of people are still trapped on board, many of them elderly passengers who cannot navigate the tilted, slippery decks without help. Maritime tradition going back centuries holds that the captain goes down with his ship if necessary. Not because captains are supposed to die, but because their responsibility to their passengers doesn't end until everyone else is safe. It's written into international law, maritime codes, and the basic moral contract between captain and passenger. Schettino climbs into lifeboat number 16 at approximately 11:30 p.m. and orders it lowered into the water. Multiple crew members follow his lead, abandoning their emergency stations to save themselves. Within minutes, the ship's command structure collapses entirely. Passenger Georgia Ananias, who was trapped on deck 4 with her husband, later testified, "We kept looking for crew members to help us, but they were gone. We realized we were on our own. My husband had to break windows to get life jackets from the crew quarters because no one was there to help us." The scene that follows is chaos beyond imagination. Passengers helping passengers, strangers carrying strangers, people forming human chains to evacuate elderly and disabled passengers from flooding decks, all while the ship continues rolling further onto its side. Some passengers jump directly into the Mediterranean Sea from upper decks, falling 50 feet into dark water. Others climb down rope ladders and emergency slides. Many are injured during evacuation. Broken bones, cuts from glass, hypothermia from extended time in 58-degree water. And where is Captain Schettino during this life-or-death evacuation? Safe on shore in the town of Giglio Porto, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot coffee. But the Italian Coast Guard isn't having it. Commander Gregorio De Falco receives reports that the Costa Concordia's captain has abandoned ship while passengers are still on board, and he explodes with rage that becomes legendary. The radio conversation between De Falco and Schettino, recorded and later broadcast worldwide, reveals exactly what real leadership sounds like when confronted with cowardice. De Falco: "Listen, I have given you an order. I am in charge. Now, I am in charge. You have abandoned the ship, and now you are going to go to the prow and coordinate the rescue from there. Schettino tries to make excuses about darkness and dangerous conditions. DeFalco cuts him off. You get back on board. That is an order. There is nothing else for you to consider. You have declared the abandoning of the ship. Now, I am in charge. You go back on board. Listen, Schettino, you may have been saved from the sea, but I am going to make you look very bad. I am going to pay for this. Vada a bordo, cazzo. Get back on board, damn it. The phrase, vada a bordo, cazzo, becomes an instant internet meme, but behind the viral moment is a Coast Guard commander desperately trying to force a coward to do his job while people die. Schettino never returns to his ship. He spends the night in a hotel on Giglio Island while Coast Guard divers risk their lives swimming through flooded corridors to rescue passengers he left behind. The rescue operation that unfolds is extraordinary. Coast Guard divers work through the night, diving into pitch-black flooded compartments, following air bubbles to find survivors trapped in air pockets. They break down doors, smash windows, and carry unconscious passengers to safety. Divers find passengers in the ship's internet cafe, trapped for hours as water rose around them. Others are discovered in interior cabins, standing on furniture to keep their heads above rising water. Some survivors spend over 6 hours inside the sinking ship before rescuers reach them. By morning, 4,197 people have been evacuated from the Costa Concordia, but 32 passengers and crew members are dead. Some drowned in their cabins, others crushed by shifting furniture, some who died of heart attacks during the chaos. The Costa Concordia comes to rest on her starboard side in 65 feet of water, half submerged just 500 yards from Giglio's shore. She sits there like a 950-foot-long monument to human failure, visible from space, leaking fuel oil into a pristine marine sanctuary. The legal aftermath reveals the full scope of what went wrong that night. It wasn't just the collision. Ships hit rocks and survive all the time with proper damage control. It was the cascade of human failures that followed. The delayed evacuation order, crew members abandoning their posts, the captain lying to authorities while people died. Several crew members plead guilty to charges related to the disaster. Safety Officer Antonello Tiovoli gets 2 years and 10 months. First Officer Ciro Ambrosio receives 2 years and 6 months, but they cooperated with investigators and expressed genuine remorse. Captain Francesco Schettino chooses a different path. He maintains his innocence throughout a lengthy trial, claiming he was performing a routine salute maneuver that went wrong due to equipment failure. He insists he didn't abandon ship, but rather fell into a lifeboat accidentally while attempting to coordinate rescue efforts. The Italian court doesn't buy it. Phone records show Schettino making personal calls while passengers were still trapped on board. Security camera footage proves he left the ship early and never attempted to return. Audio recordings reveal him lying repeatedly to Coast Guard officials. On February 11, 2015, Francesco Schettino is sentenced to 16 years in prison for multiple manslaughter, causing a maritime disaster, abandoning ship, and lying to authorities. The judge calls his actions during the disaster inexcusable and notes that his unscrupulous conduct contributed directly to the deaths of 32 people. But what about the ship herself? The Costa Concordia cannot simply remain where she sank. She's leaking diesel fuel and hydraulic oil into the Pelagos Sanctuary, a protected marine area home to dolphins, whales, and countless fish species. The environmental damage spreads daily. The salvage operation that follows becomes the largest and most expensive maritime recovery in history. Engineers face an unprecedented challenge. How do you lift a 114-ton cruise ship that's lying on her side in environmentally sensitive waters without causing further damage? The solution involves attaching massive steel sponsons, hollow compartments to the ship's port side. Cables and hydraulic jacks slowly rotate the Costa Concordia upright over a period of 19 hours. The process, called parbuckling, requires mathematical precision. One miscalculation could break the ship apart and scatter debris across miles of seafloor. On September 17, 2013, exactly 20 months after the disaster, the Costa Concordia floats upright for the first time since the collision. The moment is broadcast live worldwide, this massive ship rising from her watery grave like some kind of nautical resurrection. But the Costa Concordia is beyond salvation. Her interior is destroyed by months of submersion in salt water. Her engines are corroded beyond repair. Her elegant public spaces are filled with marine growth and debris. The ship that once carried thousands of vacationers on Mediterranean dreams has become a rotting hulk. The final phase involves installing additional sponsons and pumping air into the ship's compartments to create enough buoyancy for towing. On July 27, 2014, the Costa Concordia begins her final voyage, a slow, careful journey to the port of Genoa where she'll be scrapped. The sight is surreal. This enormous cruise ship, scarred and stained by her underwater ordeal, being towed across the same Mediterranean waters where she once carried happy passengers. The salvage operation costs $1.5 billion, making it more expensive than building 2 new cruise ships. At the shipbreaking facility in Genoa, workers dismantle the Costa Concordia piece by piece. Her steel becomes raw material for new construction projects. Her furniture, artwork, and fixtures are either destroyed or auctioned off. The ship that was supposed to bring joy and relaxation to thousands of travelers ends up as scrap metal and memories. But here's what makes this disaster truly haunting. Every single death was preventable. The collision could have been avoided if Schettino had listened to his navigation officer's warnings. The evacuation could have been faster if he'd been honest with the Coast Guard from the beginning. Lives could have been saved if he'd remained at his post to coordinate rescue efforts instead of fleeing to safety. The Costa Concordia disaster isn't really about navigation errors or ship design or even the Mediterranean Sea. It's about leadership and the moment when someone has to choose between personal safety and responsibility to others. It's about what happens when that choice goes catastrophically wrong. Francesco Schettino had one fundamental job that night: to ensure his passengers' safety. When his deviation from the approved route led to disaster, he had another job: to manage the emergency response and ensure everyone got off his ship safely. These aren't complicated concepts, they're the basic moral and legal obligations that come with commanding a vessel carrying thousands of lives. Instead, when faced with the consequences of his reckless decision-making, Schettino chose self-preservation over duty. He lied to authorities, abandoned his passengers, and fled while people died because of his actions. That's why the Costa Concordia story captivated the world and remains compelling over a decade later. Commander DeFalco's furious order, "Get back on board," became viral because it represented everything we want to believe about accountability and doing the right thing when lives are at stake. The disaster also revealed genuine heroism among ordinary people. Coast Guard divers who risked their lives swimming through flooded corridors, crew members who stayed behind to help passengers despite their captain's example, passengers who helped strangers climb to safety instead of saving only themselves. Musician Domenico Giannini organized passengers in the ship's theater to remain calm during evacuation. Cruise director Davide Tacchino stayed on board until the final rescue helicopter departed, coordinating passenger assistance for over 5 hours. These people understood something Francesco Schettino forgot: that some responsibilities are more important than personal safety. The Costa Concordia's legacy extends beyond maritime safety regulations and salvage operations. Her story became a parable about leadership failure that resonates across industries and cultures. Business schools study the disaster as an example of how poor decision-making can cascade into catastrophe. Military academies use it to illustrate the importance of command responsibility. Most importantly, the Costa Concordia reminds us that in our interconnected world, individual choices can have massive consequences. One captain's decision to show off for friends led to 32 deaths, environmental damage, and over $1 billion in costs. One moment of ego and recklessness created ripple effects that touched thousands of lives. Today, if you visit Giglio Island, locals can still point to the exact spot where the Costa Concordia came to rest. The underwater rocks that caused the disaster remain exactly where they've always been, clearly marked on every nautical chart. The only thing that's changed is that cruise ships no longer perform salute maneuvers in dangerous waters. The Mediterranean Sea has reclaimed its pristine appearance around Giglio. Marine life has returned to areas that were contaminated by fuel oil. The environmental damage has largely healed, but the human damage remains. 32 people who boarded a cruise ship for a relaxing vacation never returned home because their captain valued his own safety more than theirs. Their families continue to seek justice and answers more than a decade later. The Costa Concordia disaster taught the world that modern technology and safety systems mean nothing without competent, courageous leadership. All the GPS navigation, radar systems, and emergency equipment in the world cannot compensate for a captain who abandons his fundamental duties. It also demonstrated that in crisis situations, ordinary people are capable of extraordinary courage. When institutional leadership fails, individual character determines who lives and who dies. The next time you board any vessel, cruise ship, ferry, or fishing boat, look at the captain and crew. Ask yourself, if something goes wrong, will these people stay with me until everyone is safe? Because that's not just their professional obligation, it's the ancient promise that anyone who takes command of a ship makes to everyone who trusts their lives to that vessel. Francesco Schettino broke that promise on the night of January 13, 2012. The Costa Concordia paid the price, and the Mediterranean Sea remembers everything.